Have you ever wondered what internal family systems is really about? Beyond the tools and the techniques, what's the big picture understanding that you need to heal from trauma and transform inside out? Today, I'm going to share the three cornerstones of IFS that are the foundational pieces that you have to understand if you want to heal deeply. And I have been there. I have lost myself several times in actually trying to do IFS the right way. And of course, my understanding of what was right were mostly parts led. When you get to know IFS for a while, you realize that it's much more fluid than it looks like at first when you're learning it from a book or even from an official training. And so I would really like to share with you the ways in which IFS is that fluidity. It is dynamic, and what are the things that truly create that healing in your system that can then lead to lasting change and lasting shifts in who you are, in your behaviors, and especially in the way that you feel in your daily life. So let's dive in. The first cornerstone is accessing self-energy is the heart of IFS, and it's also the most challenging aspect of it. And that's because childhood trauma clouds and sometimes completely breaks our connection to self. And this is why when we start doing IFS, often enough, it's our mind that steps in, trying to get it and to do it right. Or there are self-like parts that come in and try to help to do IFS. Allowing self to emerge and to heal our parts is not a given that will happen the moment you start doing IFS, but a journey that will unfold in its own time. And I know that this is really difficult to accept. Often enough, we start doing IFS with the understanding or the hope that there it is, that there we're gonna access right away our core, our true self, our inner wisdom. And it can be really frustrating when that's not what actually happens. So if you're new to this, don't beat yourself up if it feels like you're not getting it, if it feels like you're trying too hard, or if it feels like you're faking it. That's all okay. As long as you're aware of what is happening, then you're doing IFS right. It is about being curious and kind of expecting mind parts and self-like parts to step in and trying to do IFS. And it's a really good habit to start asking yourself, who is talking right now? With what energy is it coming in? Can I make that tiny little bit of space to be able to see and feel this part of me in front of me? And what does this part want for me? Why is it stepping in? And I don't even know how many self-like parts I've met in my journey, but each one have enriched me in some way. Their care and dedication and love, their relentless and selfless giving, and of course, their stubbornness. Because these parts are not trying to cheat the game. They genuinely feel and think that they're self. They genuinely think and feel that they're you. So please be gentle with them. Remember that they really come from a place of love. They come from a place of care, and all that they really need to make the space that you want, that you long for, so that the self can emerge, is to be seen and acknowledged for what they're doing for you. And this brings us to the second cornerstone of IFS, which is witnessing, because witnessing is where the magic of IFS really happens. Because when you truly learn to deeply witness your parts, something fundamental shifts in the system. Your protective parts, the ones that criticize, judge, numb, distract, start to notice you. And they start to notice you as that presence that is there to accept and see and witness and acknowledge. And you know what? They are all deeply craving that acknowledgement. They are so deeply craving to be seen for what they have been doing, because they have been giving up everything to take over this extreme role, to protect and to care in the only way that they could find when you were a little child. And so when you can genuinely be there for these parts the way that they need, they will make space. And yes, of course, there are parts that are more stubborn than others. There are parts that will require more time and more effort and more energy and more witnessing and more love and more care and more acknowledgement to make that space. There are parts that will need you to prove that now they can trust, that now things are different, that you're not 2, 4, or 6 years old anymore, that you have resources in your life, that things are not like they were back then, because that trust changes everything. The healing in IFS happens not through a checklist of techniques or questions, but through the depth of connection that you create step by step, day by day, interaction by interaction, and witnessing after witnessing. And this is especially important because trauma destroys trust. IFS is fundamentally about repairing that trust. And so we got to the third cornerstone of IFS that is very, very important to understand for healing trauma. Trauma is stored in the body. And I'm sure that you've probably heard this many other times. But one thing is hearing it, and another thing is experiencing it. I heard this so many times before I actually really got it. If you approach IFS only through your mind, it will be an insightful journey, but it won't be a transformative one. Your parts hold their burdens not just in beliefs or stories, but in physical sensations, in postures, and even in tension patterns stored in your body. We call them implicit somatic memories, and this is not the specialty of IFS. In this context of IFS, what you can do to really make IFS way more effective and way more transformational is to go deep into the somatic aspect of it, because your parts are in the body, but chances are that trauma disconnected you from your body. Not trauma itself, but parts of you that had to disconnect from the body because the body was overwhelming. The body was storing overwhelming emotions. It was storing overwhelming somatic memories of trauma. And so the parts that manage things, the parts that protect, had to disconnect from the body. And reconnecting to the body, it's a slow process. It is slow simply enough because what the body holds is sometimes very painful, and it needs a lot of trust from the parts that are protecting to allow the body and what it's storing through bodily sensations, through emotions, through those tension patterns, to really allow them to come back, to be felt in a way that feels safe. So if you skip the somatic component, you're restoring IFS into an intellectual exercise. Interesting, possibly shifting, possibly healing, but that will not reach the deepest layers and fundamentally shift the way your nervous system has learned to react to things. Because of course you can feel there is a tightness in your chest. You can feel there is a tingling in your shoulders. How does the tightness really feel like when you stay with it? How heavy is it? How heavy does it need to get to really show you how it was back then? Because this is where unburdenings begin, not in the mind, but in the felt sense. Healing trauma is by definition a whole body process. So don't rush through the physical sensations. They are the key to releasing what's been stuck for so long. So what has been your experience with IFS? Feel free to comment below and let me know what you're finding especially difficult or challenging so that I can actually create content that is valuable for you and that can support you in your journey of using IFS for healing trauma.